Hey guys, Chrono again, and I'm continuing part two of our series today on why Yu-Gi-Oh is struggling with consumers, and it's definitely something that Konami needs to address soon, because again, I think this is why the game's struggling. And one of the main reasons is it's too hard to get past a loaded field that your opponent builds more than likely on their first turn if you're in the competitive game. Now, this has been an ongoing issue now. Oh, I would probably say for the past 4, maybe even 5 years in Yu Gi Oh!, where players build these insane boards and you're watching them go ahead and play their turn. And if you have no hand trap to stop them, what they've probably done is build a board that's going to negate anything that you try on your turn. And that's really difficult to combat. It's very difficult to have fun when you don't even get an opportunity to play. And I know when I first started Yu-Gi-Oh, I would go to tournaments with my son, and because we wanted to learn how to play the game properly, and we knew we were going to lose. That was something we were expecting. What I wasn't expecting was how fast you're summoning and how many different cards you could get onto the field to where it was almost impossible for you to actually then have a turn yourself. And many players, for the most part, they didn't let up when they were playing their hands. They just, even though they knew very clearly and early that their deck was far, far superior, they went ahead and just, destroyed us in the process. Now, don't get me wrong, that actually helped us losing like that. We actually built him a really fun Blue Eyes deck where he got very competitive and good with. And we really did enjoy competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! We did enjoy if we were able to make a decent board on turn one. But again, the problem is when we faced these boards that it just constantly negated what you were trying to do. And I think that's the part that's really hard with competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the negation. That's not very fun when you're trying to, at least have a chance to mount a comeback and everything is getting negated in the process. And I think Konami realized this, and that's why link monsters were created. They recognized that it was very difficult for many players to mount a comeback because of the insane boards or really loaded boards other players were making. And so that was the purpose of link monsters, was to slow down the game. But unfortunately, players have already figured out ways around that using the link monsters mechanic to where I almost feel it's almost the same. Maybe even a bit worse than when it was before link monsters came out. I mean, you're seeing situations now where players have figured out how to kill your opponent in one turn, still using the link format, which I didn't think was going to happen, at least not this quickly into link monsters, that players would already have a way to do that to their opponent, especially since I felt the purpose of link monsters was to actually slow down the game. And the negation that's also going on with these decks that have link monsters is very similar to what we saw prior to the link format. I was actually facing a Mermail player, and I was using my ABC Dragon Buster deck, and it's a budget deck. But usually I can do a combo where I can either make ABC Dragon Buster or I could make Cyber Dragon Infinity, and I usually have a Solemn of some kind that is set. And I was not very familiar with this deck that I was facing, but the board this guy built against me was so strong that he had Trigate Wizard on the field and Totally Awesome. That's very difficult to get around, even with Cyber Dragon Infinity and to also have ABC Dragon Buster. And he just kept doing play after play after play against me. And this wasn't what I think Konami had in mind. You know, the goal was to make the game slower, but if you can build a field, like the cards I have there in front of you, in the Link format, where you have 4 ways to negate your opponent, that defeats the purpose, I feel, of what they were trying to do with the Link format in general. Because again, I think the purpose was to slow down the game, make it to where it was how it was several years ago, where there was more back and forth happening between players, instead of constantly negating what they're doing and forcing them to be in a situation where they really don't even get a chance to play the game. For new players, or even players that are used to the old format, that's not what they're looking for. They want that back and forth. They want to have fun as they play. So I do have some ideas here for Konami that I think will solve this problem. Because again, I think this is hurting their business because the game is just way too quick, even with Link format. One of the first suggestions I would make to Konami is to ban the out-of-control Link cards that are currently in the format. Link monsters are very new to Yu-Gi-Oh! And because of that, there's a limited amount of them that are dominating competitive decks. If those were to be removed, I think that would go back to the original intent of slowing down the game. And that would definitely help bring players back in. My second suggestion would be to make sure that every card effect has a very hard once per turn effect. Now, what I mean by that is that every time a card hits the field, it only gets that effect once per turn, and it's only once when that card has actually hit the field that you can use the effect, even if the card leaves the field and comes back, you still don't get the original effect again because you've already used the effect for that turn. That, I think, would solve a lot of issues where you have players that send cards to the grave, and then they figure out a way to make the card again because they've got multiple copies in their extra deck, and then you've got the card coming out again over and over and over again because they're using the effect because it's not once per turn, or because the cards hit the field and they get to use it one more time because it's a new card technically on the field. I think that if they were to do that, that would also solve a ton of issues in Yu-Gi-Oh! The final suggestion that I have is make sure that testers get to the cards in advance and actually try them out. I think this would solve a lot of issues if you were to give these players who are very creative at understanding card effects the cards in advance, let them try them out, come back to Konami and say to them, look, we have found broken loops with these cards that you're intending on releasing. We don't think that they're actually going to be very good for the format. I think that would save a ton of headaches if they actually tested these decks in advance instead of releasing these incredibly strong cards that unfortunately then dominate the format and make it very hard for people to have fun when they play decks that are using these cards. So that's it, guys. That's my second video in this series on why I think Konami is now struggling, or Yu-Gi-Oh! In general, with consumers. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure that you like it. I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.